I was 12 years old when I first tried marijuana. I started with just the flower.
Rick, not his real name, is now 15 and 9 months into full-time residential rehab. He is insulated from the fanfare surrounding New York's new cannabis industry, where there's applause at the legal dispensaries.
I bought some gummies.
With a percentage of profits going to employment and school initiatives. Meantime, the sheriff has been pulling weed out of illegal smoke shops.
This bag probably weighs.
Addiction counselors say we need to pull the covers off a politically sensitive topic.
If we're not giving accurate information around the potential public health disaster that the commercialization of marijuana can be, particularly for our young people, I think we're doing not only parents, schools, but we're doing our young people a great disservice.
You know, for quite some time now, I have had my opposition against legalizing cannabis, unless it's for medicinal purposes. But I also mentioned that we need more and more research into this. Because, you know, a lot of people say, you know, they'll tell you, any cannabis user says like, well, you know, all your things, it's all phooey. You know, I've heard this on BitChute that basically, you know, they tell you, well, don't spread these lies, because we had a video out about the dogs ingesting cannabis and it's poison for them. And one guy goes, you know, he had said it on there that, oh, I've been giving it to my dog for a long time. It's not killed him. And he goes, you know, that he grows it himself. He said, well, growing it yourself, you're probably not the same toxicity level to what's being put out there in the open. But still, you wouldn't give a dog a bar of chocolate either. You know, there are things, and cannabis is in that listing that you don't give to cats and dogs. You don't. That's not meant for them. You know, because they say, oh, it's natural from the ground. There's plenty of other things that are natural from the ground that is poison to us directly. Certain mushrooms and certain plants, berries that are very poisonous to us human beings. So you can't throw in the natural element to the situation, because there are many things that are natural. And, you know, too much of a good thing can be bad for you. Even water. People have died for drinking too much water. That has happened. Now, the one thing is that there have been people out there, researchers, doctors, that have been doing studies on what cannabis can do to us. And we've heard stories, certain researchers mention that on a developing brain, someone who's smoking weed at a young age, it can be detrimental to the mind. That basically, you know, the brain is grown, was about 25 reaches its peak level on there, and you know, you could damage it prior to that. But lately, with the strength levels changing, we're hearing more and more people being hospitalized.
THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the psychoactive chemical in cannabis.
You know, we've seen the THC concentration levels go off the chart, off the rails.
Back in the 1970s, THC levels in marijuana were typically 1%, inching up to 3 to 5% in the 1980s. In the 2020s, it soared much higher.
Especially on edibles. Lately, we've heard, you know, like I said, cats and dogs specifically have been hospitalized. Some have died on the pets that basically they've had seizures because of the type of cannabis. And the thing about it is, some of it's being laced with fentanyl these days, which is even a bigger danger to the situation. We know that some of it is being processed by growers here in the U.S. Via China, that they're involved in this situation as well. And you know, the thing about the thing about it is, and most people don't realize this, is that the illegal trade is not going away. It's never going away, no matter how much you legalize cannabis. It doesn't help. It continues to rise. We have a report coming out that in Thailand right now, there is a massive amount of illegal cannabis entering into Thailand via the United States. Think about it. It used to be the reverse. It used to be Asia used to supply our drugs into the United States. Now we're supplying right back at Thailand. But there is a report out there, and there are several articles that are running concerning this. And considering that we are in a mental health crisis, we can't overlook this particular study. But before we read into this out of the New York Post and a little bit from the Cambridge on there, I want to thank those of you who have clicked on this video, shared our videos. We have reached over 700 on YouTube. We continue to grow. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. And hopefully today is the day on this video I've earned your subscription. So once again, thank you very much on all of our social media platforms. Out of the New York Post, weed ruins young men's health, study shows stop legalization. Oops. A massive new study proves that the normalization of cannabis use is an ongoing social disaster. You got to be under the influence of toxic ideology, if not pot itself, to ignore the evidence. Researchers analyzing the health data of 6.9 million people have linked weed to a huge increase in mental illness rates among adolescent males, including as much as a shocking 30% of schizophrenia cases among young men. Now, before we go any further on that article, it is a publishing through the Cambridge Universal Press on May 4th, 2023, which is the association between cannabis use disorder and schizophrenia stronger in young males than in females. It's affecting males more than females. Understand that. And this is the methodology is individual aged 16 to 49, somewhere to the point of 1972 to 2021. It's in their methodology on there. So let's read more further into this. The trend represents not just the greater use, but the increasing potency of weed and weed products, as I've mentioned. That will only keep rising as the profit motive and industrialization of the product, now that it's so widely legalized, promote delivery of ever more concentrated THC to users. Schizophrenia is one of the most serious and tragic psychic disorders. It can be treated, but patients often go off their meds, become homeless or semi-homeless, and terrorize public spaces before harming or killing themselves or others. Now, here's the situation. To bring up a story that has been in the mainstream media, the situation with the Marine Corps that had choked out the homeless person in the subway stations. Now, supposedly the uncle, and this is in one of the articles out there, that supposedly he was on K, which is like a synthetic marijuana as well. Now, understand from the evidence that has been given so far, and what we've seen in the papers, is that this particular gentleman was homeless himself, was basically in the top listings for needing assistance in mental health, was in a hospital. He checked himself out without his meds, and that happened on the time that he perished on the subway. So think about this for a minute. When you see a homeless on the street and he starts to act crazy on it, they need help. And we are not giving what they need to be treated properly. It can be treated, but patients often go off the meds, become homeless, semi-homeless, terrorize spaces before harming or killing themselves or others. So the sheer size of the study and magnitude of the effect should make that nearly 70% of Americans who generally back legislation take a harder look in the mirror, including policymakers. Here in New York, the rollout of legal weed has been an utter disaster. You're hearing it from the New York Post. I have said this from the beginning. It has been a disaster here. The New York Post agrees with me. With few legitimate shops, illegal ones have sprung up everywhere. Over 1,500 illegal shops. Every time they shut 2 or 3 down, 5 more grow. They are targets for crime, with violent robberies at such places up massively this year. That's a far cry from equity paradise left-wingers in Albany promising from legislation. And there's zero way to ensure the shops are following the law on the selling to only over 21s. They are not. Most of these shops are not. They are selling to under, because basically these same shops, especially the legal ones, are selling illegal cigarettes, vapes, and of course edibles. You've seen the edible labels. You've seen these labels up here. You know, they look like regular candy and cereal and stuff like that you normal buy in the store. But they're not candy. They are drug-infused food. But the larger problem is the normalization of weed. Above all, impressionable teens, males, precisely the group at most at risk here. The numbers prove it. Emergency calls related to pot use among 6 to 18-year-olds have jumped 245% since 2000. At one NYC addiction clinic alone, 95% of recent admissions were driven by cannabis. And anti-drug laws hold society together. Abandoning them does not create equity. It worsens everyone's quality of life. The study shows it wrecks people's mental health. So remind us exactly what is the justification for continuing on this path. And this is not the only thing out. You know, we had another report out of it a couple of days ago saying heavy cannabis use is linked to schizophrenia in young men, which is also on the journal Psychological Medicines, that found shocking 30% of schizophrenia cases among men aged 21 to 30 could have been thwarted if they had averted cannabis use disorder. Scientists examined the recent cases of schizophrenia and abnormal interpretations of reality resulting in hallucinations, delusions, or disordered thinking. The study's authors stated that in 2021, CUD played an intricate role in 50% of the cases occurring in men ages 16 to 49 and 4% of the cases affecting the women in the same age group. According to the Centers for Disease Control, it affects 3 in 10 marijuana smokers. Understand that. Already the Center of Disease Control is saying this. And, you know, there are other stories that have come out as well. You know, there's this particular one, which was at the time of our recording, we saw this article and I just want to read a little bit into it. From crime and homelessness to schizophrenia and suicide, mothers share how pot stole their sons. The text from her son Randy that Heather Bacchus received at 1:26 a.m. on July 17, 2021 seemed like good news. I'm quitting weed for good and I want to surround myself with healthy and happy people, he wrote. This has been too much for me and for you guys. Less than an hour later at 2:09 a.m., a second text arrived. I love you. I'm sorry for everything. I love Dad, and the same to him, and I wish him have been a better person. It was a suicide note. That night, Randy killed himself. His death followed months-long struggle with psychotic episodes and paranoid delusions, something his parents, Heather and Randy Sr., say was triggered by years of heavy cannabis use. Now, researchers suggest that they were right. A study published in the National Institute of Health warns that cannabis use is implicated in 30% of cases of schizophrenia among men aged 18 to 30. The study links schizophrenia to cannabis use disorder and the inability to stop using cannabis despite the negativity impacts it has on the user's life. And separately, the Centers for Disease Control say a third of pot smokers are plagued by the disorder. This is the things we continue to talk about. We say this on a constant basis. People say, well, no one has died of it that we know of. Understand this. This is the things that they keep saying, that no one has died of it. But yet, there are people who have committed suicide over this. There are people who are having mental health issues over this. Understand this. Understand this. This is what is happening. And it's going to continue to happen until we say no mas. Our kids are the ones that are taking this. I thank God, me and my brother, we never got into this. I mean, we drank a lot, and I admit we drank a lot. But, two wrongs don't make a right to the situation. Thank God we never got into marijuana. Now, there are other parts of my family, I could say the lesser, that they did get involved in it, and they did get sick, and basically they did pass away at a younger age. And this has been happening for many years. As the pot gotten stronger, the THC, it has gotten really strong. Now you have to worry about what's being sprinkled into it. Yes, we have found fentanyl in the cannabis. We have. And the thing is that people are still not taking to the situation. Look at the streets of Philadelphia. Look at the streets of New York. Look at the streets at Seattle and San Francisco. You got people out there looking like fucking zombies. Come on. You have drugs out there being mixed together that are causing people to just literally look like, they're flesh-eating zombies. The flesh on their bodies is wearing away. People have lost their limbs. They've lost their lives. When are we going to realize that this was not a good idea? Medicinal purposes, down the line, we could probably research it properly and use it to proper. People said, well, they'll make money off of it. Well, it's going to take money just to do the research. Because you have knuckleheads out there who think that they're researchers, and they just sit there and say, well, we haven't found anything that is that can correspond to what you guys says. Have you done the research for many years? No, you haven't. You haven't backed up. I think, how's it they say is, well, the meta files doesn't correspond. You said no. There are articles out there done by researchers, backed up by others, that will tell you this is what's going on. Understand this. Like I said, I get guys on the comments like, I've been using it for years and it hasn't really affected me. So, well, you might be one of the lucky ones. But there are others out there that can tell you different. Go down to these street levels in Philly, in New York, in Seattle, in San Francisco. You see the people that are having panic attacks, that are going crazy on the subway systems on there. They need help. These were good people at one time in their lives. And they were lost to us, lost to our communities. No mas, no more. We do not need any more drug legalizations as the way it has been just jerry-rigging the whole situation. What we need is more research. We need more strength in our laws. And most of all, making sure that our police force are enforcing those laws. Our DAs and courts enforcing those laws. Because people said, well, people were innocent during the Rockefeller laws. That was then. This is now. You have situations out there. We're not talking about the average pot smoker who's smoking every day. We got people out there selling it willy-nilly without any restraint to the situation, and that includes the legal trade as well. So comment below, let me know your thoughts to this nature, how you're feeling about this, because this is one of the important things. There are there are movies that have been made for many years now that has warned to situations similar to this, using drugs to control the population. This is something that's not uncommon. Even Roddenberry had written into a situation in Next Gen that type of a storyline. So don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Thank you for clicking on this video. We'll see you on the next one, and bye-bye now.